Alright guys, what we're going to talk about today is the idea of having Java wander through files in a directory and launching a file. It's like if it's a text pad, a text file, launch Notepad. If it's a Word document, launch Word. If it's a JPEG, launch Microsoft Paint or whatever the registered application is. Now, of course, since Java's been around since forever, there are multiple ways of doing these things. We will show in one case, in the launching mechanism, a couple of different ways of doing it. One is to use a newer Java class called the desktop, and that was failing for me to open JPEG files, so fell back to the older one. And the older one relies on a different API that differs slightly based on whether you're using a Mac or PC. We're okay because we're all using Windows in here, so we can all get the same one going. But we'll take note of the difference when we get there. So, you know, when you're sitting in a command window, you can type dir, get a list of files. I'm going to cd into desktop. I don't seem to have any text files here. I'm going to create a text file on the desktop. New text document. Hi there. I'm going to rename it something a little bit better than that. Test.txt. Okay, so if I do dir, test.txt, I don't find it. dir star.txt. There he is. Why has he got two dots? That's the problem. Alright, now he's got a correct extension. dir star.txt, so I can type test.txt, and that uses the Windows shell, the command processor, to launch Notepad. That's what we want our application to be able to do. So we're going to reuse the file class for some of this stuff. And I really wish I had not printed these notes on a page, because this is hard to read. Okay, so let's play with the file class for a minute before we go any further. Make a new project. Let's make a class that's just going to have utilities here in it. Static utilities, so that we can call them from any class in the project, in the package. So let's make one called printinfo. Or, yeah, that's good enough. And it's going to accept public static void printinfo. And we're going to pass it a file handle. Now the file handle has a whole bunch of things other than, we haven't been using any of the methods of the file handle. We've just been using it like for the scanner class or whatever. If we type f dot, we see all sorts of things. Can we execute that file? Can we read that file? Can we write that file? Does that file exist? This would all be useful stuff if you were going to create an application and you didn't want to override an existing file or whatever. Get name, get path, all that kind of stuff. So let's just do some of this stuff. String file name is equal to f dot, let's get the path. String is file is equal to, all right, if it is a file, question mark, is file, colon, is directory. We could find out if it's hidden or not. We could find out if it's openable or not. How about can read? Is equal to f dot can read question mark can read colon can't read. So let's create a new file. File f is equal to new file and pass in a file name. Quote t.txt. And let's print the info on that file. And we don't have that file in our directory structure. I'll be interested to see what this does. Print info on that file we just made. I should have made that a lowercase p since that's not a class name. I should have prefaced it with the name of our class because it's a static utils colon print info. There we go. Didn't do nothing. That's because I got all this information and forgot to print it. That was brilliant. So string dot format, well, no. String s is equal to string dot format. Let's %20 minus 20s for the path name, followed by a space, minus 10s. Is that going to be enough? How many letters is this? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Okay, so minus 10s and then minus 10s. That ought to do it. And then let's pass in the file name, the is file string, and the can file string. And I broke it up into 3 lines because my font is much larger than yours. And let's actually print that out. System.out.println s. Alrighty, t.txt is a directory, can't read. Well, that is directory bit doesn't look right, but it's true it can't be read. It doesn't really exist. So maybe is file, is dir. Let's make it say is not file. And now that's going to be more than 10 characters wide. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. So let's modify this like to %12s, %12s. And you remember what the minus sign does. It just left justifies the text. All right. Is not a file, cannot read. Very good. Well, we never actually created the file, so that's all perfectly valid. Let's go drop a text file named t.txt in our NetBeans directory. So this is my file. Save as, go to your documents directory or wherever your NetBeans directory is. NetBeans projects, go to the newest one. In my case, it's looks like it's Java Application 26. And don't go any further. Don't go into source or anything, but save it right there. And let's run this again and see if that changes its output. Now it is a file, and we can read it. Let's see if we can figure out a way of launching that file. All right, here is the newer way using the desktop class, which we could pop up and read in Java Docs. So let's do public static void. Why am I making these static, by the way? How would I get to invoke print info if it was not static? Well, let's make it non-static and find out what we have to do to run it. Okay, there we go. It's complaining. Non-static method. What would I do to use that method then? Yeah, we'd have to create an object called utils. So I don't feel like creating an object called utils just to print something out. So I'm going to add the word static back here. Wrong place. There, static void. Okay, so we're going to add a new one. Public static void launch. Should we require a file handle, or should we just require a file name and then open the handle while we were there? I vote we just take the file name. String file name. So file f is equal to new file, file name. Desktop D is equal to desktop dot get desktop, and then D dot, I wonder what browse is. Launches the default browser to display a URL. That's kind of cool. Mail. We can really mail something. That's kind of cool. Print a file with the native printer. Neato. But really what I was going to do was .open. .open should launch the associated application to open the file. And you know what associated means. It means that if you have an extension configured, it knows which app opens that extension. So d.open that file. Now I've goofed. Why is it an unreported exception? Alright, so we need to add some try-catch to it. Try this. Catch. Is it file IO exception? Already forgotten.
That's what I said it was. It was a file IO exception.
Okay. File IO exception. EX.
It actually says IO exception.
It's just IO exception?
Yeah.
Alrighty. Add import. Alright, let's print out a nice error message. System.out.println could not launch plus file name. And let's actually print the error itself. System.out.println ex.get message. I could have skipped this step if I just passed in a file rather than a file name. I wouldn't have to create a file there. We could make that change if we wanted to. I don't know. Sure, why not? Launch file F, and then we can delete that line. But then we get an error over here where it says file name. Let's change that file name to f.getName. And let's try calling it utils.launch that file, t.txt, which does exist. We copied it there. And it launched Notepad. Pretty neat. Let's make it a file name that doesn't exist. t2.txt. Boom. Wow, that's more blowing up than I expected. The file does not exist. That's way more than I was expecting to see. I thought we caught all this. I guess we have a new exception here, a legal argument exception. Okay, we can add support for that. Or we should check to see if the file exists in the first place. How could we do that? Maybe we can come up here in our launch and do if f dot, nope, lowercase f, if f dot can execute. Let's see if that works. Or maybe make it say if not f can execute, then return. We're going to bail out early if we can't execute it. We ought to print an error message though. That's kind of cheesy. So if that's true, then we're going to print system.out.println not executable colon plus f dot get name. Okay. At least we didn't get an exception. And we got away with not adding exception handling in order to handle that case. It might be better to just add exception handling, you know. Why is that file not executable? Because it doesn't exist. Is there just a way to check to see if it exists? If f dot can read exists. There we go. I like that one. If not exists, let's print a different error message and return. I'm just going to copy that line, those lines, and then paste them. Not found. How about that? All right, so it says not found. Good enough. What if you passed in like a directory specification? You probably know that a single dot means your current directory. So if you type in cd dot, that just means the current directory. So I'm going to just use a dot there. And we should not be able to launch F, in my opinion. I wonder what will happen. And it did. It launched the file, the Windows Explorer. That's kind of neat. It says it's not a file, so I'm glad I didn't check to see if it was a file. All I did is if exists. So that's kind of cool. Let's drop some other things in there and see if it can open it. Let's create a Word doc. All right. That's possible. Let's pause the recorder then. Save as. Well, why don't I open an old document? Ooh, Word not responding. That was a bad choice. Excuse me. So, this is a Word doc. Let's save it as a Word document, test.docx. What are you doing? Okay, I happen to pick the one machine in which Word is broken. Okay, I guess I'm going to just drop a Word doc in there because it's not letting me create a new one. Alright, I'm going to grab an old Word document, copy it, go into NetBeans folder, save it, but call it test.docx. Rename it test.docx. What I wanted to do is save it both as a docx and a PDF just to see if it would work on both of them. I failed to do that. So I'm going to change the file name to test.docx. See how much luck we have. It launched it. Neat. So far, so good. Now, on my machine that I last did this on, I was not able to save an image. So I'm going to Google up some kind of image, Star Trek. Go to Images, find an image, download it, do a save as, save image as, put it in that NetBeans directory. My folder, NetBeans project, desk Java application. I'm going to call it test.jpg, test.jpg. Alright, now I'm going to change that to test.jpg. And it worked. Awesome. So that means that we don't have to implement the alternate way of launching a file from Java version 1.7. But we're going to type it in anyways, I think. Yeah, it doesn't take too long. It's not too much writing. So, public static void launch on Windows. Let's just pass in the file name. String file name. Now this is a lot of gobbledygook here. Runtime. Get the runtime engine. RT is equal to runtime.getRuntime. And then RT.exec, a command. The command is not going to be as simple as what it shows there. I guess we're going to build an array of strings. So in front of that, let's do string command is equal to the first array. The first one is cmd.exe, which you may have heard of. It's the thing that happens when we pop that one open. That's cmd.exe. The second one will be the file name, or excuse me, /C. And in my notes it says capital C. I'm not sure what that does. Why don't we come up here and find out? cmd/?, capital C carries out the command and then terminates. Sounds good. Okay. And then the last thing will be the file name that we pass in. So we're creating an array of arguments. And then we're going to run that command, that array of strings. Or not. Oh, we have to put a try-catch around it. must be caught or declared to be thrown. So we put a try there, and let's catch IO exception, and just print some kind of error, system.out.println. Same ones we got somewhere else. We did that already. Where did we print that exception out? Could not launch, right there. Okay, if you were doing this on Linux or Mac, instead of command.exe, you would just replace that with the word start. All right, f.getName's not working, so let's do file name there. So that's our launch windows. If we wanted to do launch Mac, we would just copy all that stuff, but replace cmd.exe with start. Let's test to see if it actually works. I'm going to scroll down here, and instead of launch F, we know that works. How about utils.launch Windows file name? I'm getting an error. I don't have a file name. Okay, fine. I should have just made it accept a file. We're going to do that. We're going to make it accept a file rather than a file name. Put an F there for launch Windows, but we have to go back and make this accept a file. So launch Windows is going to accept a file. File F, and we just are going to make this say string file name is equal to f.getName. And it worked. That's the way I had to do it on my machine downstairs. I'm not sure why I had to do it that way when we have this perfectly good, nice Java version 7 way of doing it. All right, since we're passing in a file, we could do the same kind of thing here. We could check to make sure that the file exists and that it's an executable. I'm just going to copy those two lines, those two if statements from here, and paste them into my launch windows. Now that's making the code look overly complicated, really. Okay. We could simplify that code a lot. You know, just rely on exception handling, not do the if this, not do if that. I'm going to go back to launch since that worked rather than launch window. And now for something completely different. Let's get a listing of all the files in the directory. The way you do that is we're going to need to create a filter that specifies what kind of files we want to accept. So let's come up here and do class myFilter. It implements filter because filter is a class that they give us. So public string extension is equal to no extension specified, just in case we feel like adding support for specific file extensions. Let's make a constructor for it. Public myFilter that accepts the extension as an argument and sets this dot extension equal to extension. I've got some kind of egregious syntax error. It's highlighting.
Implements
Implements.
with the S.
Yeah, that would do it. Implements with an S. Thanks. Okay. And it doesn't know what a filter is, so I'm going to add the import for the filter. That's not the right one. File filter. I'm so sorry, it's not just filter, it's implement file filter. Had to change that. All right, now it's not done. We actually haven't put the filter in, we've just set it up. So here's where we put our accept method. Public Boolean accept, lowercase a, sorry. For now, let's just make it return true. We'll come back and make this filter a little bit more sophisticated, where it matches the extension. Now what are you yelling about? My filter is not abstract and does not, okay, accept has to accept a parameter, which is a file. Well, that didn't do anything. I didn't actually do anything with that filter. Okay, we have a filter class. Right now it's useless because it returns true on every file we pass it. But we could make it check the extension, you know, or make sure that it's a file or not a hidden file or whatever our options are going to be. Let's not bother launching any files at all right now. Let's not bother printing out any info at all right now. So I commented those two things out. As a matter of fact, we don't even really need that one. I'm going to comment all that stuff out. So let's create a new filter of the type that we just created. My filter is equal to new my filter, and we have to pass in an extension, but I'm just going to say empty string. It didn't know what my filter was. I didn't give it a name. MyF. All right, now we're going to create a file that indicates the current directory. File curder is equal to new file, and since period represents the current directory, there we go. And we're going to ask the current directory to give us a list of files. So file array, which is what it's going to give us, file list is equal to curder dot list files. And we're going to pass a filter into it, myF. If you didn't pass a filter in, it would just return everything in the directory. Might be fun to play with. All right, now let's cycle through the files, printing them all out. For file F in the file list, we're going to print info, utils.print info on that file. All right, so it displays a directory. Build is not a file. Build.xm is a file. Dist is not a file. Manifest is. NB project is not a file. Source is not a file. T.txt is a file. So let's decide what kind of criteria we want to match. Based on all that, so what we want to check is to see whether our filter is going to filter out all files that are not files and that are not readable. So go back up to your filter. Let's do this. If f dot is file and f dot can read, return true. Else return false. Now when we do our directory listing, it should be a lot shorter. I'm real curious to see what it looks like on yours. So lastly, let's get the file name of the file so that we can compare it to the extension. String file name is equal to f.getName. So we're going to modify this so that it's not only is file and if can read, it's going to be and tell you what, I'm not sure if that would work. What happens if you use ends with, .ends with, and you're passing in an empty string? I guess we'll find out. So if you can read it and file name ends with the extension. This isn't perfect because it won't match extensions, if you type in uppercase. But this dot extension. Return true. Right now our extension is nothing, so I'm hoping it'll match everything. But now I'm going to change it to find all txt files. So I'm going to come down here, and when I create my filter, its extension is going to be .txt. And it only finds one file. It looks like it's printing the path rather than just a file name. That's okay. We could call. About the only thing left that I can think of doing would be display an entire directory and then ask them which file they want to execute. We already have it sort of doing that. But let's, instead of printing out the info for that file, let's just system.out.println the file name, f.getName. And then under here, system.out.println, which file do you wish to open? We need some way to let them quit. Or Q to quit. I guess they're not going to ever open a file named Q. We need a scanner. Scanner SC is equal to new scanner. And then string file name is equal to sc.next. They better not have any spaces in it because we didn't use next line, so why not make it dot next line? If the file name equals Q, we need to exit. So if file name dot equals quote Q quote, let's just return out of it. We're not in a loop yet. It'd be nice if we looped, If we didn't return, then we could launch that file. Utils.launch. Well, we're going to have to open the file. We don't have that file open. It'd almost be niftier if we listed all the indexes of the files. All right, let's just do it the hard way. File F is equal to new file name. And then we're going to do utils.launch F. It only found one file. Which file do you wish to open? t.txt. This is my file. So we can make it slicker and validate that the file exists. You know, we can make it loop. I think this is enough to demonstrate the point. What else can the desktop object do? Let's come up here, way, way, way up here to where we were launching the file with the desktop. I'm just going to do show Java doc on desktop. Desktop class allows a Java application to launch associated applications. Let's try a URL, just totally for fun.
It's URI.
URI, whatever. Okay. Alrighty, so maybe up above here. Desktop dot get desktop. Parentheses, in parentheses, dot browse. And let's specify http://www.rose.edu. And I've done something wrong. It probably wants a try catch. Nope, string cannot be converted to URI. Okay, fine. We would have to create a URI. So when I said whatever, when you pointed out that it was URI, that was very rude of me. Okay. Unreported exception. I'm going to have to catch. Well, that was a bit too much. Okay, so we're going to move that URI is equal to new URI and that desktop.get desktop.browse business inside try catch. It's still complaining that oh, now good old IO exception. I need to add a clause for that. So for URI syntax exception, we're going to just say bad web address or something like that. System.out.println bad web address. And for IO exception, we're just going to print the message. System.out.print. In fact, we ought to do that for both of them. ex.getMessage. I'm going to copy that line and put it up here. There's no guarantee we're going to be able to get this to work. I hadn't planned on doing this. We just had 10 extra minutes. All right, it launched rose.edu. That's pretty nifty, in my opinion. All right, I think that's enough. So let's drop it in Dropbox S. And in case you need to see it, here are the imports. And I will scroll through the rest of the code before killing the recorder. Here's our utils class, the first method, print info. The next class, launch Windows. If I took out get rid of that. The third one, launch, using the desktop class. Then we had a filter. And we had a main. This part of main launched the browser.
Public relations guy who hasn't talked to a single word from the officers in like since the beginning of the year. Said do juniors have to go to the NHS induction ceremony?
And this
They're not-
part
They're not required this year.
did a search for all files matching that extension. Let us open it. Alrighty.